His decision is puzzling in light of the economic strength we see in the United States, and our economy continues to grow. In the longer term, the United States remains the world's largest, most dynamic, and most innovative economy, with the strongest financial system in the world. Fitch's decision is puzzling in light of the economic strength we see in the United States. I strongly disagree with Fitch's decision, and I believe it is entirely unwarranted.
And it's affecting all of them. So what's happened is Bank of America has now set aside $847 million to try to cover the next quarter of losses. Okay, it's pretty big, but not to be outdone, but are outdone. Wells Fargo set aside $900 million plus to try to cover their losses. And Chase was even worse. They had to put aside $1.2 billion to try to cover their losses. And they announced that in the last 12 months, $200 billion in deposits have left Chase Bank. This is huge, folks. We have the makings of a banking apocalypse unlike anything we've ever seen in our lives. So I hope you're making plans, moving assets into real things and real stuff, because you're going to want to be holding something real when the dust settles here. I don't know how bad it's going to get, but this is going to make 2008 and 9 look like child's play. Okay. When the old system comes down, it will come down completely. This is going to be the death of the Federal Reserve System. The military's been on mass movement throughout the United States. There have been heavily movements in 27 states. There's more coming. We've even seen it here locally. They were literally driving a tank down the main drag here in town. It was unbelievable. So a lot of choppers going overhead, military aircraft. Everybody's like, what's going on? Well, we're actually in the midst of the roundup, and they're kind of doing this strategically because they can't, this isn't something you can do in one day. It's just too big for that. So they're doing it in pieces. And what we're beginning to hear reports of is the internet outages are happening in some areas for an hour, for 2 hours or 3 hours, and it comes back on.
The power to interrupt or slow American military deployments or resupply operations by cutting off power, water, and communications to U.S. military bases. And in the Times article, and my apologies, I specify the Times here, they go on to say that basically Microsoft detected this code, but then they're told that U.S. military officials knew about this. They've known about it for months. They just weren't public about it. Now the Times has this report saying this malware is out there, and they still don't know how deep it's running into our systems.
Yes, the Chinese are really good hackers.
The New York Times reporting that the Biden administration is working to track down this cyber warfare. It believes that Beijing has the power to disrupt those operations in the event of armed conflict. Over the weekend, Chinese officials did accuse the U.S. and Taiwan of turning the democratic island of Taiwan into a, quote, powder keg and ammunition depot. That follows the U.S. announcement of a new $345 million military aid package. I know that's a mouthful. I told you a lot already. Let's dive in here with Mark Esper, who served as U.S. Secretary of Defense during the Trump administration. Always good to see you, Secretary. But I got to find out, in terms of how legitimate these claims are about Chinese malware, on a scale of 1 to 10, is it true? Do you believe that this is actually happening? And if so, how dire would it be for our military?
Yeah, look, it's a very serious concern. It's something that we worked on, looked at closely during my tenure. I've always said since my days in office that I thought the first shots of an opening conflict with China would be in both space and cyberspace. And with regard to this particular article, that plays out some scenarios where we were concerned that the Chinese might have embedded malware that could shut down the electrical grid surrounding a an Air Force base, an Army base. They could shut down or upset our communications networks.
That China's hacked critical U.S. infrastructure in the search for malicious computer code and systems that control American power grids and water supplies. Our chief global affairs correspondent, Martha Raddatz, has more for us this morning. Good morning, Martha.
Good morning, Michael. The fear is that hidden malware in U.S. infrastructure, like power grids and water supplies, are meant to disrupt possible future military operations, especially those that could involve Taiwan. The New York Times quotes an official saying that Chinese hackers have what is essentially a ticking time bomb that could allow China to stall military deployments by cutting off power communications or water supplies at U.S. military bases, or even beyond those bases to those of just ordinary citizens. It was just back in May that Microsoft said it detected malware associated with China in Guam, where there's a huge American base, saying that it could disrupt critical communications infrastructure between the U.S. and the Asia region during future crises. The Biden administration saying only they are working relentlessly to defend the U.S. from disruption